By 1941, Germany gained staggering success against the Allies. Its initial conquest to capture France was achieved in just 6 weeks, thanks to genuine planning and an element of surprise. On the Eastern Front, Axis forces unleashed the biggest land invasion in the history of mankind. 3 million men marched through USSR and perished the unprepared Soviets. In just 8 months, the German forces captured Kiev and Minsk and besieged Leningrad. On the Far East, the Japanese Empire's victorious campaign in Korea, Manchuria, and China, and their seizure of French Indochina, allowed Japan to gain foothold in East Asia. But the Western powers reacted against Japan, especially the United States, which warned Japan that it is prepared to take military actions to preserve stability in the region and assured the involvement of the United States if one of its allies were attacked by the Japanese Empire. Negotiations were done to de-escalate the tensions between US and Japan, but after many proposals and counter-proposals, they concluded nothing. Japan's increasing need for raw materials such as steel, oil, and minerals, sanctions and embargoes placed by the United States, and its aim to expand its empire fueled its ambition to take control of the resource-rich Dutch East Indies. But the problem is, Southeast Asia is heavily colonized by the Western powers, and Japan will not be able to fight a war with the United Kingdom, Netherlands, and the United States simultaneously. So the only way to win a war in the region is to attack without notice and cripple Japan's most powerful rival in the Pacific, the United States. The US Pacific Fleet, stationed in Hawaii, is seen by the Japanese as the biggest obstacle in its conquest. So by early 1941, Japan's war planners led by Admiral Soroku Yamamoto designed a plan to completely destroy the American naval might in the Pacific. The plan aims to sink vital naval assets such as battleships and aircraft carriers to avoid any naval interference by hostile navies while Japan proceeds to its conquest of expansion and seizure of East Indies. The plan also aims to buy some time while Japan is fortifying its positions in Asia and increase its naval strength before the big US shipbuilding industry ramp up its naval productions. The most vital aim of the plan is to demoralize the American armed forces and the public on waging a war with Japan, and instead super peace to prevent a bloody conflict. But the plan ignored the naval repair yard, oil tank farms, power stations, and submarine bases, because Japan's war planners is overconfident that inflicting a heavy decisive blow in the enemy is enough to achieve a short but victorious war. This overconfidence proved to be a disastrous decision for Japan, because these vital facilities is the workhorse of the American fleet in the Pacific, and by not destroying this, the Pearl Harbor attack will just slow down the pace of the upcoming war and not to totally incapacitate the might of the enemy. On November 26, 1941, the Japanese strike force consisting of 6 aircraft carriers, 420 aircrafts, 2 battleships, 3 cruisers, 8 tankers, 11 destroyers, and 28 submarines departed Japan and headed to Hawaii to execute the operation. On December 7, 1941, at 7:48 a.m., the attack commenced. 2 waves of bombers, fighters, and dive bombers was organized, comprising of over 390 aircrafts launched from 6 carriers. The first wave targeted the surface assets such as battleships, aircraft carriers, destroyers, and air bases. The second wave served as the finishing blow. The whole attack lasted for over 2 hours. 20 American ships were damaged or sunk, including 8 battleships. 300 aircrafts and over 2,500 men were lost. The Pearl Harbor attack inflicted a heavy toll on the United States. It is a success, but in the same time, a failure and a blunder. Like I said earlier, Japanese war planners ignored the vital facilities in the naval base, which resulted in a faster recovery of the American naval might in the Pacific. The reason they did not destroy the facilities is that they believed that these facilities is not as important and insisted that the attack on Pearl Harbor alone would shorten the upcoming conflict. Therefore, Japan only prepared for a short war and not anticipated a long bloody war. We should also take note that the Japanese Navy failed to destroy the 3 aircraft carriers of the US Pacific Fleet, because no American carrier were at Pearl Harbor during the attack. We must also mention that a third attack wave were possible, but Admiral Ichiichi Nagumo, commander of the Japanese carrier strike force, decided to instead withdraw from the area. Admiral Soroku Yamamoto supported the withdrawal, but later regretted Nagumo's decision. The Pearl Harbor attack is considered as one of the biggest military blunders of the Second World War, because the attack dragged the economic and military powerhouse country United States into the war. The entry of the Americans refueled the Allied military machines in all fronts from Europe to Asia. This is a big factor that brought the Axis powers into submission. In addition, Japan's miscalculation of the upcoming war and wrong military decisions contributed to their defeat in 1945. After all, we could consider the attack on Pearl Harbor as a successful path to absolute failure.